there is a way for you to create stories very, very fast. No, it's not AI. And it works for anything. Short stories, RPG adventures, comic book games, I mean, maybe even movies and novels. And I know that because a few days ago I decided to try it and I managed to create 5 stories very, very fast. And I want to show you how to do the same. Because really, it's a very simple trick. Now you see, a few years ago something crazy happened, COVID. Suddenly people are stuck at home. Now that led to something very interesting, is that people who used to play RPGs and board games, miniature games, they didn't have a way to get together with their friends anymore. That led to a boom on something different, solo games. Suddenly you have solo RPGs, solo miniature games, and the way that those games worked is that since you really didn't have a game master or an adversary or something like that, it would come to several systems which will help you to define that story, create that story. Most games use the term oracle to define that, like the ancient Greek oracles that would see the future. In essence, there are tables. Tables with different themes where you would roll dice and you come up with elements of that. And it's not that the story is ready, it's more like prompts. So the idea is that you would connect the dots, which means you need to use your creativity. A while ago I started playing those games and you might see some of the other videos in this channel where I'm using games like 5 Parsecs from Home, Mothership. I want to show one example of a tool that you can use for that. We're going to be using Iron Sword and Starforged. So this is a solo RPG. It means that it's a game there you're both the player and the game master. You're creating the story as you go. And things as they happen, you roll dice and see what happens. It could be rolling dice for creating a new planet, a new character, a new event, a plot twist, everything will come of that. But how exactly we're creating that? Because remember, we're not playing a game, we're creating a story. Every story has at least one character who wants something. And there is something preventing that character from getting it. So that's the way that we start with it. Let's create a character. Who is the character for our story? Let's roll a few dice on one of those oracles to come up with what character this is. So first of all, roll. Let's see what role this character has. 75. 75 is a scavenger. Okay, so we know what is more or less this character. Let's get like a first look. What's an adjective to define this character? 29. 29 is distracted. So we have a distracted scavenger. And what's his goal? What this character wants? 34. Forge an alliance. Okay, so that means we start having something, right? So let me note this down. We have a distracted scavenger who wants to forge an alliance. Who does he want to forge an alliance with? And now here's the trick. The next steps of this will really depend on what comes when you're rolling the dice. There's another kind of table that's very, very common in this kind of game, which are more generic, which are those ones. Actions, theme, descriptor, and focus. And in the game you use it in different ways, mixing and matching them. What I'm going to do in this case is that I'm going to roll one in each one of those tables and just note down those words and see how that helps to come up with the rest of the story. So first one, action. 93, surrender. Team. 58, opportunity. Surrender opportunity. He's a scavenger. So here's the moment when you start making connecting the dots. So he's a scavenger. Surrender opportunity, maybe he came across something that's very valuable. Does he need to give away that opportunity that he found when he was scavenger to forge this alliance? Descriptor. 77. Prominent. Okay. Prominent. And the last one is a focus. 44. Illusion. Unit illusion. Maybe this alliance is not really going to happen. Maybe the opportunity is illusion. This game specifically has a table for plot twists and plot opportunities, and it might be a good thing to roll on that. Story complications and story clues. So let's start with a complication. What would be the complication of this story? 95. You were diverted from the true crisis. Maybe he was trying to forge this alliance, but something happened, preventing him from doing that. What's the story clue? 85. Suggests a looming event or deadline. Connecting the dots here. So let's say that he found something, he was looking for something, this opportunity he came across, and he realized that this opportunity is something that he could use to forge an alliance. There's a time for this to happen, either because the alliance would end, because there's something that had need to rush to get this alliance, or because the opportunity will be lost somehow. Maybe the illusion. So diverted from the crisis. Something happens that maybe gets on the way. Who's this alliance? Why they're forging this alliance, right? They're forging these alliances because there's a trouble. What is the kind of trouble, the kind of crisis that's leading the character to need to do this? So let's roll to see who's this faction that the character is trying to forge alliance with. So Starforge has a table for factions. I mean, actually, several tables. Let's see what kind of faction this is. 85. A fringe group, band of outlaws, outcasts, and rogues. So it's not a big faction. Okay, so there might be a reason for why he's looking for this kind of people. What's the influence that they have? 29. Isolated, limited influence in a remote location. It makes sense. They're some kind of fringe group, right? What kind of fringe group they are? 85. Scavengers. Let's roll a bit more on this faction. So we can roll for things like what's the project, what they want, and the relationship. Maybe we can roll for the relationship to see how they relate with the character, right? 81. Temporary alliance with. Okay, so I guess that in that sense, I would say that it could be that the character has already contacted them, brought them to this place. Maybe the story it's already about to forge this alliance. This scavenger found something and brought this group of scavengers to this place as an offering. I'm going to give you something in exchange for this help, for whatever help is, we don't know yet. But in the end, that's really an illusion. It's not real. Why does this character want to forge an alliance? Maybe he's from some settlement or something like that. So settlement trouble. The settlement has a 35. Hazardous environment. Let's roll a few more. Let's see where this settlement is in. 60. It's orbital. So it's a space station. Makes sense. Maybe it's leaking atmosphere. What does it look like? 36. It's a high-tech construction. Okay, so why would a hazardous environment happen there? The authority like 81. Corrupt. Maybe that's the key, right? Maybe we have a high-tech space station, but it's a corrupt government, and for that reason they don't have the parts. Maybe parts of the station don't really have access to a good environmental life support system. It could be, and because of that, the character is trying to negotiate with this fringe group of scavengers, trying to come across parts to fix the station. Could be. Okay. Now we know that the character is scavenger, is connecting to scavengers, there's a surrender opportunity. So there is something, right? There is a derelict. So there's two ways we could do that. We could go with the, there's a starship tables, so find out if maybe it's a floating ship somewhere. But there is also specifically here in this game, there is a whole thing with derelicts. So maybe our character found something that could lead to this story. So where is this derelict? 36. It's planet side. Maybe it's a crash site. Let's see what's the conditions. 96. Heavily damaged. What does it look like from the outside? 34. Hazardous readings. Radiation, something like that. And from the inside, 17. Shared surfaces. Maybe there was some kind of combat. Going back to the starship row, because I want to see what was this derelict's mission. There's a table for starship missions. 27. Deliver message or data. So maybe this ship is some kind of legendary ship. It was supposed bringing some kind of very important information. It got lost somewhere. Our character somehow came across it. He tried to sell that information to this scavenger group who can help fix his settlement. You know what? I'm going to roll for the planet. You have tables for that too. Why not? What kind of planet is this? 51. A Jovian word? Okay, does it make sense that the ship will be planet side if this is a gas giant? Is it floating in the gas? So as far as we know, gas giants, I mean, of course there is a cover of clouds and all of that. The farther you go down, the gas starts getting more solid. It almost acts like a liquid, but I guess at this point we're already dead anyway. We could say that maybe the ship is slowly falling into the atmosphere. That's why there's a deadline, because it's slowly falling into the atmosphere of the planet and the pressure increases with that. Could be. There's some additional tables that we can roll into, try to find out more information about this planet. Be an atmosphere. 18. Toxic. Kind of expected. Is there life on this planet? 63. Scarce. Oh, there's actually life there. Okay. What does it look like seen from space? 88. Unusual atmospheric colors. Cool. Don't know if that adds in anything, but anyway. Planet side features. 99. Precursor vault. So in Starforger, the precursor vault is like an ancient alien sort of thing. Maybe that's the trick. Did this ship have information about this place? It could be. See, that's the thing. Diverts from the true crisis. Suggests a looming event. So maybe this ship had the location of this precursor vault. That's why those characters were looking for it. That's why it's a mythical ship. Everyone knows that this ship came across this vault with this ancient alien tech, and then it got lost. Our character, our distracted scavenger, somehow came across this ship, and he decided to try to sell that information to this fringe group of scavengers in exchange for help to fixing the problem with the space station. What he didn't know is that the location of the vault is actually on this planet. That's the plot twist. So you see, that's the idea. The thing is that you can't just roll dice and as it makes sense you roll on something different and you come up with more. I mean, you can keep rolling. Like I said, I could roll, for example, to see who is this character. Who is this character that's coming with him? Who is the scavenger? What comes to my mind immediately is that the story, since we want to have a short story, it can start already in the action. The character is arriving on derelict, carrying with him maybe one character from this faction. And now here's an important thing. I don't remember which writer was it. Maybe it was Mary Robinette Kowalski. She says that every time you add a character to a story, you have to add 3,000 or something like that words. If you're focusing on a short story, you need to stick to less characters. In this case, I want to stick to very short story, 2,000 words, 3,000 words. So I don't want to add too many characters. Maybe our character is only coming with one other character. Let's watch the first look of this character. He's 79. 79 is tattooed. Pfft, it doesn't really tell me anything, but the guy has tattoos. It already helps to kind of give a distinction to it. I could roll again. Actually, table says that you should roll once or twice. 11. Aged. So it's an older guy, tattooed. There's an initial disposition. Like, how is it like to the character? 9. He's friendly. See, maybe that's why they have a temporary alliance. What does he want? Maybe this character doesn't really want. So here's the thing, it's a general story thing. Every character in your story should want something. Even if the story is not about him, the character should want something. Because, I mean, first of all, that makes the character more than just a single dimension, right? But it can help you to figure out how the character should react. So, yeah, let's see, 33. What's the character's goal? Find a person. What person is that? Maybe it's not relevant to the story, like, and that's the point, is that if the story is about the distracted scavenger, maybe find a person is not something relevant to this story. And of course, and it's the most important part, this is your story, right? At any moment that you're rolling dice and trying to come up with a story, you could figure out maybe that it's actually the aged, tattooed, friendly guy looking for a person that's really the protagonist of your story. What if you completely switch it? Now, instead of being the story about the distracted scavenger who found something and is trying to forge an alliance, it's a story about the aged, tattooed guy, which also is a scavenger, who's friendly because he's trying to look for someone. Did he know someone on the crew of this ship that got lost? It could be. Okay, so there's a lot already. You see that just with a few rolls and you're just connecting the dots and things suddenly make a lot of sense. Now here's the thing. We didn't create a universe, right? We're only creating a story. When you have a universe in which you're working with, things are a lot easier to set in place. So in my case, the thing that I like to write is space opera. It's adventures in space. This channel, it's all about veiled space, is this universe that I created. You'll find some other videos here in the channel. You can even find a short story that I have published online. You can veil-space.com, where you can just download the book there. Do that with any kind of universe. If you're writing a story about Star Wars or Star Trek or any universe, of course it doesn't need to be science fiction. I'm just using an example of science fiction, but it could be anything. There's, of course, like I mentioned, the fantasy version of this game. There's another tool used for RPGs called Mythic, which is great for that kind of thing. It has several tables, different kinds of tables that could also be helpful if you wanted to have an idea of how to create a character using the Mythic rules. I have a video about this. You can check it, of how I ended up creating a character for that. But the point is that once you actually have a universe to help you, it really makes a huge difference, a lot easier for you to connect the dots. And like I said, there's maybe moments where I'm writing this story and I come across a situation where it just blocks me. There are tables for that. Maybe I want to know more about the ship. Maybe I want to know about this vault. There are tables for that. And there is always, in those kinds of situations, that main table that I told you about in the beginning. Let's say that you're stuck. You don't know something that should happen. Maybe roll the action. Roll the action on the team. We could even go as far as say, for example, in the first part of the story, what is the action that's happening. 35. 35 is depart. Ha, see? Is the story happening when they're leaving the derelict ship? And on the team 63, power, depart power. Maybe the ship is running out of power. And you go from there. You got stuck? Roll dice. See on the table what comes. And that's it. So the thing that I'm going to do is, I'm going to write that story. And I'm going to post it online. Of course, you can subscribe here and click the bell and all of that, so you're reminded when the story come up. But before that, I'm also posting those other stories. Because like I said, I have a lot of other stories that came up just rolling dice. And I'm already writing them. So right now, if you're not doing anything, just go to the site now, check the blog, Beneath the Veil, and you'll find at least one of those stories there. And leave a comment if you think that makes sense. Or if there are any other tools that you try to use. I think that's cool, that if there's maybe other kinds of tools that you can use for this kind of story, let me know. Maybe there's more stuff that I don't know about. And I would love to know more that I could use for my own stories too. And what's next? Let's write.